Oh my goodness. Welcome everybody. Another edition of Learn Photography with Duck. As always, I am your host, the Duck, and we got episode number 18. Woohoo! Hopefully everybody is staying nice and cool. It is a miserable day. Um, uh, just before we started recording, I was mentioning that I went out with my camera today, taking images for today's class. And I decided I was going to go down to Booth Memorial Park. For those of you who've been there, know it's a quaint little park over in Stratford. A beautiful little place. If you cannot find a photograph in that park, there's something wrong with you. But anyway, just walking around with a camera, not doing anything, excessive, and I was dripping. I was dripping sweat, and I could feel the temperature rise, in the short time that I was there. So it's a miserable day, but hopefully everybody is doing well. All right. We had an update to Lightroom, but I'm not going to get into that because they really didn't do anything overly major. They also did some updates to Photoshop and Adobe Camera Raw. So if you're interested in learning what they updated, maybe we'll do that next week. But overall, nothing to spend 2 hours worth of time going over the minor changes that they make. Here's Mark. All right. Okay, welcome, Mark. All right, the reason I keep mentioning Mark, you're the guest of honor today. I was telling these guys that we might have a new guest today, and I'm glad you joined us. And the reason I keep mentioning Mark is because I met Mark through the other group that I belong to, which is the Professional Photographers Association. It's a study group for those photographers who are looking to get their CPP certification through PPA, which means their Certified Professional Photographer certification. Now I know the majority of you guys are not involved with PPA or anything, so it doesn't, probably doesn't interest you guys. But I'm just saying that's how I met Mark. And in particular, he was looking to enter an image into a competition that was coming up. He's already entered it. Mark, when is the judging? When's the final results for that?
The judge goes on this coming Wednesday night.
Oh, this
Very soon.
Wednesday. Okay, so hopefully next week we'll get some good news.
Yep, we'll know,
But
we'll know something.
awesome. Well, the reason I bring Mark up is because we got together we get together on Tuesdays at noon, and it's just a couple of us old fogies helping out the new incoming crowd that is looking to better their photography. And so we spent a couple weeks kind of going over some suggested images that Mark had for the competition. The theme is minimalism. And it got me thinking about minimalism, and it's something that I really haven't covered a lot of. So those past couple of weeks that, I've been helping Mark out, with our other regular Ron, which I think I've mentioned in this group before. We kind of helped him out and gave him some critique on his images and suggestions for edits and things like that. But it got me thinking, maybe we should, for this group, have a little conversation on minimalism. So, Mark, welcome to the group. You are the inspiration for tonight's class. So thank you for that. All right.
I've come to my own.
Um, now I know you've already submitted it, so anything I say here is probably going to be no good for you for your current submission, but maybe down the road. All
I'll
right,
be
so
part of the discussion
what's that?
on Wednesday night. I'll be part of the discussion on Wednesday night. I'll be in the room where it's happening. We'll be
Awesome,
discussing these things.
cool. Yeah, you get a lot more out of it when you can get that kind of back and forth. So cool. So what I did today, as I kind of alluded to, I took a drive down to a local a park. It's called Booth Memorial Park. It's in the next town over from me. And I live pretty much on the border of Shelton and Stratford. So for me, it was literally 10-minute drive to the park. And I decided, I was going to go there very specifically to see if I can capture some minimalist photos. Okay. And so what I want to do is before, let me switch over to my desktop. I just want to go over real quick what it means for minimalist photography. So basically, the definition of minimalist photography is a style that emphasizes simplicity, and the use of minimal elements to kind of convey a more powerful message. So it's a combination of just simplifying the visual elements, getting rid of distractions in order to emphasize whatever the story or the message is to the image. And it typically focuses on reducing the visual clutter, getting rid of unwanted elements, whether you're doing it in camera or in post-production. And we'll kind of cover that a little bit here. And of course, focusing on the essential elements, often utilizing negative space. So if you look up the word minimal or minimalist photography, you're going to see a lot of images that utilize vast open spaces, negative space. But it also emphasizes clean lines in order to create a sense of calm. Calmness tends to be a prevailing theme, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. All right. And of course, emphasizing the visual impact. Now, that's the definition for minimalist photography. But I'm going to introduce you to another definition, which kind of shares some of the same aesthetic that has been growing in popularity over the past, I don't know, I don't want to say a full decade. It's a little bit newer than that, and it's called liminal photography. Liminal photography, and this kind of steps in from the cinematic world. And liminal spaces, unlike a minimal space, okay, minimalism is about simplifying the scene, where a liminal photograph is about emphasizing the in between. All right, often focusing on transitions, very much into open, empty, abandoned spaces that kind of evoke a sense of mystery or sometimes even nostalgia, but more often, a sense of eeriness. And this is something that is used in a lot of like horror movies, suspense movies, some sci-fi movies, where they want to kind of create a sense of dread, or a sense of stepping into the unknown. All right. So these spaces are characterized by their transitional nature, existing in the in between. All right. So the example that I have here, you can see we are in an interior space that is kind of dark and gloomy. And then there's an opening that transitions into a more, maybe it's an outdoor space, but it's definitely a better lit. Okay, so there's a that transition between the darkness and the lightness, indoors and outdoors. All right, the state of two distinct different places or times. Okay, now the reason I bring these two up, and let me see, I even have pulled up some. Um, I went on a couple of websites looking up. This one is minimal. Okay. So minimalism, obviously, there's no sense of transition between one and the other. There's no sense of transition between one space or another. It's basically distilling things down to its core storytelling structure. Okay, but liminal spaces also does the same thing. It distills things down to a very minimal aesthetic. All right, but the difference is that there is a transition from like one space to another. Okay, so I want you to understand the differences between the two, because oftentimes you may find yourself that there is an overlap in what you're photographing. Okay. Any questions on what we just covered? The definitions. Okay. All right.
Sounds good.
So what I did today was I was looking to find a minimalist image. Okay. And let me flip back over to my desktop. And like I said, I went to this park. And at this park, they host a couple of associations. One is a local ham radio operators group. And they have a little, building with a ham radio tower. But they also have this one, which is a local astrological society. And I thought, well, this building is kind of isolated away from everything else. So this may be a good subject to create some kind of minimalist landscape with that particular building. All right. But as you can see, it is adjacent to a cemetery. So what I need to do is, as I am approaching this scene, I need to figure out how can I isolate my subject from anything that is distracting. Okay. Now, what you may not see too clearly, actually, now that I am what you call it, enlarging it. Oh, won't let me. Where are we? I lost my image. Where is it? What the heck? Oh, here it is. All right. My annotation. Oh, my annotation tools won't let me Gosh darn it. All right. All right. Well, anyway, let's see if we can figure this out. All right. There's a little bit of a, what you call it? Parking area in front. There's actually two parking spaces, and there are these two signs. All right. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to photograph it from the front and try to reduce. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go very quickly through here. And what I did, as you can see, I kind of did bracketed shots. Okay. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to see if I could reduce any kind of distraction. So I wanted to reduce the cemetery that was on the side. All right. It won't. Why won't it let me? There we go. Oh, I know. Give me 1 second. Let me see if. There we go. Yeah, there we go. I got my annotation back. Okay. Mark made a comment about my annotating, my annotation skills. All right. So there's a signpost. There's a signpost, and of course the cemetery is right here. All right. And obviously this was taken during the day. So there's a heavy contrast between the sky here and the trees here. All right, which will need to be kind of balanced out a little bit. All right, so I figure balancing the sky and the trees probably not going to be that big a deal, but I need to very carefully pick and choose my angles in order to isolate this little observatory and try to create it as a minimal image. Okay. The other thing is, you know, how can you create a minimal space, you know, with so much going on? Okay. And that's the other thing that I wanted to tackle. All right. So I headed out, gave myself some distance to see if I can, you know, see what it looked like, you know, with a wide view. I placed myself right at the edge of the cemetery boundary in order to keep the cemetery out of frame. And this is kind of what I took. As you can see, creating a lot of sky because, like I said, one of the things that defines a minimalist aesthetic is lots of open space. Open space is very easy. It's an easy cheat because it's pretty devoid of anything that's going to attract you visually, all right? Unless you have a very impressive sky, all right? So the first few things that I took was, you know, try to see if I can kind of bring attention to the subject and at the same time eliminating any kind of distractions, right? And at this point, what I'm doing is I'm looking for composition. Looking for composition, not necessarily worrying about how it's going to be edited, all right? I figured that's going to be secondary, okay? So I went from a horizontal to a vertical composition. This solidified it a little bit more for me. And then I started deviating because my head started going in other directions, all right? Still trying to keep that minimalist thing going on. I said, okay, what about this particular shack says this is the Astrological Society or Astronomical Society meeting hall. And for me, it's that little dome above it. Okay, so if we zoom in to this building, okay, uh, anybody who looks at a dome like this is immediately going to know what it is. It's for, you know, setting up a telescope and looking up into the night sky. But as you can see right next to it in big bold letters is the name of the building, which is the Booth Memorial Astronomical Society. And I have to make a decision now. All right. Do I get rid of the lettering somehow and just concentrate on the dome, or do I keep the lettering and make it part of the image? And I says, well, you know, it's kind of placed in an awkward position in relation to the dome. So let me experiment with keeping it. All right. Which now all of a sudden, what popped into my head was Wes Anderson. All right. And those of you who do not know who Wes Anderson is, he is a film director who's done very quirky movies. Grand Budapest Hotel being one of them. Just recently on Netflix, he did a series of adaptation of Roald Dahl's short stories. He did what's the one with the campers? Moonrise something. Well, anyway, just look up Wes Anderson. He's got a very, very specific aesthetic, and he tends to shoot things straight on, you know, at a very straight on 90-degree angle. All right. So that led me to experiment with just capturing the dome. All right, seeing if I can do a nice close-up of the dome. All right, and now instead of utilizing the sky to kind of create a minimal space, I was going to use the trees behind the dome to kind of create that minimalist style. Okay, so now I'm starting to like the composition a little bit more. It's becoming a little stronger because now the actual subject is more prevalent in the composition, and I've reduced it to its core its core storyline. All right. The rest of the building, it's a building's a building is a building. But in this particular case, what makes it special is that dome. So I said, all right, if I concentrate on that dome, will it strengthen the story? So I took this and I took this one, all right, going back to my earlier composition, but this time, you know, I had Wes Anderson in my mind. I said, let me do it, you know, dead on. Okay. And I pushed it kind of like to the bottom edge of the frame. All right. And I gave it a little bit of room because I knew I was probably going to crop this in a little bit tighter. Okay. So here it is. I came in straight, a very uniform composition. I already knew in my head that I would be getting rid of these distractions in post-production. All right. I wasn't too worried about trying to eliminate these two poles in camera. All right. So I did that one, and then I decided, well, what if I come in really, really tight? I didn't like this at all because now it's a picture of a building. All right. We've lost that minimalist feeling. All right. And this kind of now becomes more of a snapshot. I'm just walking by, I see the building, I take a photo of the building, and we're good to go. And, for me, that didn't do it. Oops, I lost my, come on. I lost my, all right. Then I tried doing a very extreme crop. And again, I kind of lost the whole concept here. All right. Then I decided, well, let me try another one. And at this point, I said, all right, I need to get away from that Wes Anderson theme, and just concentrate on the elements. So for me, the elements is the dome, and to a certain extent the sky as well, because when you say astronomy, you immediately think sky watching. So for me, even though having the trees and in the background to kind of simplify things, it removed that astronomical element out of it. So here I came back looking for that astronomical aspect of including the sky. I like this a little bit better compositionally, because it puts a big open area, not only above, but we have this kind of a chunk of an area up in here. All right. We have all this white cloud area. We have some texture going on here, okay, which kind of reduces this area in as far as simplicity. It adds texture here, while this one, it kind of removes the texture. All right, so I kind of like this. The building, all right, one of the things about composition is you want your elements to kind of lead the eye in. With faces, the direction of a person's face kind of leads the visual eye through. Now, we're dealing with a building. The building does not have a face per se, but in a sense it does. We kind of recognize that the front of a building usually is the part that contains the door, usually maybe even a window or two. But in this case, we can see that the opening of the opening of the dome is here, kind of looking this way. We have the door here, all right, and the angle of the building is kind of looking this way, all right. So for that reason, I decided to put the building to this side of my composition, looking into a very open space. All right, makes sense? All right. So that was the motivation for this one. But what killed it for me a little bit was now we're incorporating another element into this, what I'm looking to create a minimalist image, and that is the cemetery. The cemetery is now encroaching into my composition. And of course we have, this driveway. But the driveway wasn't as much of a concern as this cemetery. We need to make that cemetery gone. So I figure, all right, you know what? I can get rid of it in post. Now, the purists may say, oh, well, why are you doing that? Because that's an element that is physically there. If you get rid of it, you're in essence lying. Well, I'm going to take certain artistic liberty, because that's what I want to create. I want to create more of an artistic image rather than a a journalistic representation of the actual space. Make sense? All right. So I like this composition. So I kind of flagged this one as one of them. Okay. And the other one that I kind of sort of liked, uh, even though it's not as strong, I liked the whimsy of this one. All right, so I figure we'll play with that one. And this composition, which has a very Wes Anderson feel, I figure, you know, let's play around with that. So those are the three that I decided I was going to play around with. All right. So let's start off with this one. Okay. Actually, this exposure is kind of very representative of my day. It was, as you can tell, very overcast. All right. So my goal now is to turn this into kind of a minimalist image. All right. But I also wanted to strengthen the storytelling. And part of the storytelling, you know, with an astronomical society, of course, is more of a night sky. I'm not taking this photograph at night. I took this photograph in the day, but I have pretty good confidence in my editing skills that I can probably turn this image into one of those day into night photographs. So that's what we are going to do. And actually that's what I did. So what I decided I was going to do is let's see, is I did this one. All right. So this is the end results. Okay. And as you can tell, let me get rid of myself here. As you can tell, it kind of meets the minimalist criteria, where we've kind of reduced everything down to just its bare core elements. All right. This little building in the middle of, well, it's not in the middle of nowhere, but we kind of feel that it's a little bit in the middle of nowhere, with the night sky above it. And the reason I mentioned liminal spaces at the beginning of this talk is because as I was developing this, it kind of gave me that sense of a liminal space where we are transitioning, you know, being outside. All right. Being outside, kind of stepping through that doorway. The doorway is kind of inviting us to step in because of the light that is shining down from the little light fixture. It's kind of inviting us to step into that other space. So it gives us that transition from one space into another. All right. But yet, my original goal was not to create a liminal space. It was to create a minimalist space. Okay. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an understanding. Any questions so far as to what led up to my choices and what was running through my head when I was capturing the images? I get a thumbs up from Mark. Okay. All right. So let's walk through the edit, shall we? Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a virtual copy. All right. And I'm going to, in my develop, I'm going to reset this virtual copy. Okay. So we have no edits. All right. And one of the things that I discussed previously, oh, actually, you know what? Let me go ahead and share my screen. That way you guys can see this full size. I should have done that right from the get-go. All right. Okay. So one of the first things that I do, and I've mentioned it in the past, is that when I import an image into Lightroom, I apply a certain amount of editing across the board to all my images in order to get it to a state that is ready for me to go ahead and be a little bit more creative. So the first step that I normally do in all my images is I normalize the images. Okay. Now, in one of the most recent updates, Lightroom decided that they were going to create these profiles called adaptive profiles. Okay. And the adaptive profile is right up here where it says profile. All right. We have adaptive color and we have adaptive black and white. Okay. And adaptive color is typically the one that I will apply across the board because as you can see, what it just did, it does a lot of the steps that I normally used to do previously. And my previous preset was to lower the highlights, open up my shadows, increase a little bit of the contrast, and I would get this result. Now I'm getting this result in a profile rather than a preset. Now, what's the benefit of that? The benefit being is with a preset, I would have to go ahead and manipulate my sliders in order to achieve a certain look. So I would have had to reduce my highlights, increase my shadows, maybe boost my contrast. I usually increase texture and clarity. And I used to increase vibrance just a little bit as well. So all of this was being done in a preset. Okay. Now everything's being done in just a profile. And as you can see, it did everything that I normally did, but it did not touch anything here. These are all still at their zero location. That means, in essence, it normalized my image for me, and it lets me, it gives me free reign on all the sliders from the zero position to add my creative aspect. Okay. So I love that part about the adaptive color. Now, there a little caveat. It's not 100%. Okay, it's not 100%. All right, and one of the things, and I'll probably end up showing you later, is that they just introduced another aspect to the adaptive color where as you are editing, if the adaptive color profile starts going out of whack, it will give you a warning that says to reapply your adaptive color. And sometimes that could lead to very tragic results. All right. So maybe we'll see some of this earlier. All right. So anyway, I've applied my adaptive color, and you can see that, let's see, we'll go back to Adobe Color. All right, see how blown out my sky is? See how dark the shadows are? As soon as I applied that adaptive color, everything balances out. Everything balances out. Okay, all right. So let's analyze this. What is it that we want to do? Well, our sky, we want to darken. All right. And the shadows, we don't necessarily want to darken too much, but the tree line, we might need to darken as well. All right, let me pick a different color. All right, so we might need to darken this. Definitely gonna need to darken everything, because remember, what I want to do is I want to convert this from a daylight photo into a nighttime photo. So what are the aspects of a nighttime photo? Everything gets darker, okay? But it's not as simple as just reducing the exposure slider and making everything dark, all right? We still need to be able to read all the elements in the image. We need to artificially light certain things, all right? Also, we need to make sure that our sky is a lot darker, because it's going to be a night sky, than everything else, than our foreground, all right? So just moving the slider is not going to do that, because moving the exposure slider is going to darken everything universally. So that means that as the sky gets darker, so will our foreground, and we need to create a balance between the two. And I also don't want to lose sight of the building. Okay. All right. So the sky is going to get a lot darker than our foreground. All right. And I do not want to lose sight of this. Actually, let me expand that. This. All right. Because I feel that sign is going to be critical. All right. Because it's part of the story that I'm trying to tell. The other thing is, we have a light here. We're going to illuminate that light down onto the front of the doorway. All right. It's a practical light. It's off right now. We're going to digitally edit the light as being on and shiny. Okay. The other thing is, the sky was pretty flat, so the light is pretty flat. But I want to give the building a little bit of dimension. All right. So the brightest part, all right, I'm going to draw a sun, even though we're going to be converting this to a night sky. But our light source is kind of up in this area. All right. The light is coming down in this direction. So I want to keep this lighter than the side. All right. So we want to darken the side in relation to the front. All right. I also want to darken this. And finally, the overall mood is everything needs to go bluer. Okay? Because night skies tend to be devoid of that warm sunlight color, because it's filtering through a lot more atmosphere. We're going to blue up our light. Okay? The only thing is that our light needs to be warm. Okay? So we're going to cool everything. Not cook. not cook, cool. We're going to cool everything. We're going to keep the light on the front of the building warm. And that's pretty much it as far as manipulating our exposure. Okay. The other thing is that I might want to control texture a little bit. All right. My preference is I love texture, but in this case, I might want to play around with the texture a little bit. All right. We have a lot of texture. Let me go here. We have a lot of texture here. We have definitely a lot of texture in the trees. Okay. And we do have some texture here. All right. But if we look at the texture between the trees and like the clapboard and even the texture here and the texture here, all right, the texture is very fine, all right, in these areas, while the texture up here is very coarse, right? All this texture is very coarse. Is it coarse? Yes, coarse, right? Okay. And then we have the texture up here that's a little bit more on the softer side. All right, so we have 3 different layers of texture going on. We got to pay attention to that and see how they interplay with each other as the image goes along, okay? And finally, the last thing we need to consider is color, okay? Color. All right, we have blues up here. All right, we have greens. We have red. And this is gray. But remember, as we cool things off, this is going to have a blue cast. So it'll be a blue gray. This will be a blue green, and this is definitely going to be a blue blue. All right. All right. And of course, we got to get rid of the cemetery. All right. We're going to get rid of this, and I want to get rid of that. There's a little twig here I want to get rid of. This, questionable. I don't think we need to get rid of it. I didn't previously, but we'll leave that up to you guys. All right. So everybody follow my train of thought. All right. How I mapped it out. All right. Mark, you're new to the group. So this is something that I do a lot, is mark up. It creates a roadmap for you guys to be able to follow along with what I'm doing. But this is something that I actually do with pretty much a lot of my images that I really want to take, not just a general edit, but I want to really, really move my edit up. All right. I'll mark it up just because it kind of gives me a roadmap of what I need to do. Things do change as I go along. All right. So let's take a look. The first thing we can do is we can see what we get if we bring our highlights down even more. Okay. That's not looking too bad. What I want to do is I want to make sure that I don't lose a lot of the texture in the building. Texture comes from contrast. All right. So the reason I didn't say contrast is because when people think contrast, they think of, the difference between light and dark, which is pretty much all over this image. But looking at the texture of the dome, looking at the texture of the door, all right, which is very subtle. So I might want to, emphasize that a little bit. Okay. All right. Maybe open up the shadows. Okay. Now here, what I'm doing is I'm trying to imagine what this might look like as a night image. So let's bring the exposure down. Okay. And I'm going to start cooling everything off. Okay. And now it's starting to look pretty nasty because it's trying to look unrealistic. All right. So let's bring the exposure back a little bit. Let's bring the, all right. At this point, I want to tackle the getting rid of the distractions. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Lightroom's AI object deletion. Okay. And I'm just going to select that whole cemetery. All right. It didn't select it. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint in the areas that it missed. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the remove button. Let the AI do its thing. It's going to analyze it and match it to the surrounding. And what it's going to do is it's going to give me 3 variations. So I'm just going to cycle through and see which of these. Oh, I like that one, right? See this one, there's kind of something going on in the background there. I don't want the eye going anywhere near that background. Okay. This one, that looks like a golf course. And this one kind of matches everything, and it doesn't force my eye over there. It's a little bright right on that edge, but that's minor. Okay. However, if you don't like any of the 3, you can always hit generate again, and it's going to go through another set. Okay. Let's get rid of this trash barrel. Remove. It's going to do its thing. And just like previously, it's going to give me 3 different versions. Probably not much of a difference between the 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, not much difference. All right. So I kind of like the 3rd one because, all right. And then this little branch right here, we'll get rid of that. All right. And that's that for that. Okay. I'm going to bring my highlights back up because I'm looking at the dome. I'm not liking what it was doing. So let me just zero back all of this. I'm going to try approaching it a slightly different way. All right. The brightest part. Okay. Here's another little trick that I mention a lot. Lean back away from your screen and give it the squint test. All right. If you squint your eyes, what it does is it breaks things down into blocks of light and shadow. Okay. So it gives you an idea of what is prominent, what's getting lost. Okay. So as soon as you squint, all right, you can see this big band of lightness on the top. You can see this the dome and the top of the roof and the door and that sign. Everything else is dark. All right. So let's get rid of that upper part. All right. So at this point, I'm going to move into doing local adjustments. And for that, we're going to need masks. All right. One of the masks that we have is the sky selection. All right. We're going to take that, give it a second, and you can see that it gives me a nice selection. Okay. And to see what the selection looks like, it's this show overlay. All right. If it's clicked on, you can see the overlay. All right. The other thing you can do is hit the letter O on your keyboard, and that toggles it on and off. Okay. I usually toggle it off, all right, when I don't want the interference of the mask. But as soon as we start applying some kind of um, uh, action to it, some kind of modification, it automatically gets rid of it. Okay. All right, so this is just moving the exposure level down. As you can see, if you go too far, we'll start getting that halo. So we got to be careful how we do this. All right, the exposure might not be the best way. Let's try with reducing our highlights and reducing our black point. Okay. All right, maybe even increasing the contrast just a little bit. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the saturation. All right. Night skies are not that saturated blue. They are very much a much more darker blue, muted blue. Okay. So let's bring that down. Increase the contrast. Bring our shadows down. Bring our highlights down. All right. And what I want to do is I want to be careful with the halo around the trees. I don't want those to be too obvious. All right. We have to be careful. All right. Now, one of the things that we can do is we can add to our mask a nice round brush. Let's make that brush bigger. Okay, and I'm going to increase the feather to 100%. And I'm going to decrease the flow to about 50%. And what I want to do is we're going to just go right along that edge. Okay. And we're going to start incorporating some of those trees into that mask of the sky. And what that's going to do is it's going to start minimizing that halo. But you have to be careful you don't overdo it, because it's also going to darken the tops of those trees. All right. So be careful. All right. If I need to, I might even touch into the trees a little bit. Okay. That's looking a little bit better. Maybe over here. All right. Bring that down. All right. All these areas where kind of the sky peeks through some of those branches, we might want to hit those areas. Okay.
Duck,
Yes.
what does the flow do in this situation?
Okay. So flow controls the amount of the effect you are applying per stroke. All right. So if here, I'm going to create a new brush. Okay. And I'm going to bring the exposure up, and I'm going to bring the flow at 100%. All right. So if I paint, all right, what it's doing is it's giving me 100% of that brightness. Here, let me make it even more. Okay. So now if I cross over this way, you can see that the brightness of that second stroke equals the brightness of that first stroke, right? Because I was applying 100% of that exposure brighten. Now, if I bring that flow to about 50%, when I make a pass, all right, notice how I have to keep going over and over in order to build up. All right. This allows me a certain amount of control as I apply the brush. So I'm not applying 100%. I'm applying about, the slider says 50, but it's actually, if you look at it, it's not quite 50% of that effect. All right. It's a lot less, but I need to go over it many, many times in order to get that same intensity of 100%. All right. So what
Okay.
that allows me to do is very gradually build up to the effect that I want. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So let me get rid of that. All right. Uh, and the reason being is, I want to control that halo. All right. But certain areas, because what we have is we have sky where it meets dark trees, and sky where it meets light trees, and sky where it meets kind of like in between. All right. So as I'm brushing along, those very distinctly different borders need to be handled slightly differently. All right. So being able to paint in gradually in these different areas allows me to control it a little bit more. Okay. Make sense? Okay. All right. So the sky's starting to look a little bit more like a night sky. All right. Let's go back and I want to maybe reduce this area in the foreground. I don't know. Well, I still have all of my sliders here. All right. So maybe if I bring my shadows in a little bit, that's looking pretty darn good. Maybe open up the blacks just a touch. All right. My black point. All right. What I want to do is I want to pay attention between areas where the light is hitting the top of the trees and areas where are in deep shadow. I'm manipulating the contrast between these two areas with just two sliders, my shadows and my blacks. Okay. As I decrease the shadows, making them darker, it's also going to decrease the blacks, making them darker, taking that black point from being dark shadows with some detail to being black with no detail. I don't want to go into that black with no detail. I want to keep some detail in there. All right. So hopefully that makes sense. So I'm looking for that balance, all right, between my blacks, all right, and if I press and hold my Alt or Option, you can see how my blacks are very, very black, but as I start going here, all right, and opening them up, I am no longer in the realm of those blacks going to black with no shadow. All right. Okay. All right. And my highlights, all right, you can see that the highlights kind of affect the sky more than it does the dome, but the top of the dome, it is affected. So I got to be very careful. All right, so I might not do anything with these highlights. All right. However, I can take that sky and darken it up a little bit more. Okay. Now, remember, part of the problem with the sky mask is the haloing around the trees. Okay. What I want to do is I want to darken the sky, but I want to give it a little bit of a more natural feel. So I think what we can do is we can create a gradient. So what we're going to do is we're going to darken the top. All right. Now, if I press and hold my shift key, it's going to constrain it to that horizontal. All right. And I'm going to bring this until my mask just hits these lower sections of that tree line. Okay. So we're getting 100% of the effect at the very top, and it's going to dissipate to about 50% of the effect in the middle line, and then disappear off into that horizon, that background. Okay. Now, obviously, this mask is affecting the trees. We don't want to affect the trees. So what we're going to do is we're going to intersect this with another mask. And that mask is our sky mask. So to do that, we press and hold the Alt or Option key, and it turns, oh, it won't let me, my zoom, let's see, will it do it here? No, it won't let me. Okay, watch these two buttons, all right? Oops. As I press and hold the Alt key, it turns into my intersect. All right, so what I'm going to do is click on it, and it's going to intersect with my select sky. All right, and you can see that it confines that gradient just to the sky area. All right, and O to turn off my overlay. I want to see what it's doing. All right, I'm going to darken that sky up a little bit. I'm going to open up my highlights just a touch because I'm looking at this area. Again, I want to be careful with the halo. Okay. All right. And if need be, we can probably bring this up a little bit. All right. And that's, excuse me, that's looking relatively darker. All right. Without looking too crazy and without without really accenting those halos. All right. All right. Here's a good excuse me. my my voice is going already. All right. Here's a good point to deviate a little bit. Remember earlier I mentioned that one of the things about the adaptive color is as you work along with your edit, because the underlying edits that it created are being manipulated, it's now giving me a warning up here. All right, so this is new. Okay. This is letting me know that some of the AI features has gone out of sync with what it originally did. All right, so this is a bit of a warning. Now, if we click on it, it's going to pull up and it's going to highlight everything within the edit that I used AI on, and you can see that I used AI remove to get rid of the cemetery, the twig, the garbage pail. I used AI masking because I used it to figure out the sky. And what's highlighted with that little square highlight is the original adaptive profile that I did at the very beginning. All right. And you'll see that there's this little recycle symbol here at the end, which is letting me know that the following settings need to be updated in order to properly render based on your recent edits. Okay. Now, what it's telling me is that the original edits have now gone out of sync from what it originally did. All right. And in order to bring it back to what it originally did, I need to press this button. All right. But if I do that, it's going to go ahead and generate. Oh, let me go. There we go. It's going to generate. Oh, it didn't do it this time. Ah, last time I tried it, it completely ruined my image. Okay, I was kind of hoping it would do it again. It didn't do it. All right. So I guess I didn't manipulate it enough for it to really go wacky. Okay. But sometimes what it does is it wants to balance out all the edits that you just did to create a more balanced image, which is not what I want. I'm purposely throwing the balance off by converting it more into a nighttime image. Okay, so now I'm going to continue down. I'm going to make it a little bit darker, more like a real nighttime image. Okay, my highlights. I'm going to, again, I'm watching this area here, all right, because I want to be mindful of those halos, okay? So if I manipulate my highlights too much, see how you can see that halo, all right? I want to make it look like it's nighttime, yet I want to keep that halo gone, all right? So right now, let's do that squint test again, okay? Let's take a look at that image. All right. If you squint, now what is the more dominant part? The dome, the top of the building, all right, the roof line, the door, and the sign. Okay. We are no longer competing with the sky. We pushed that sky back. All right. But still squinting, you can see that the building itself, even though it's red and it contrasts against the green, luminosity wise, it disappears into the tree line. Okay. So what we have to do is we have to bring that building out. Okay. So for this, I'm going to go back to a local adjustment. Okay, not a global. All right, and I have to now at this point make a decision. Okay. One of the masks I wish they would incorporate, wouldn't it be cool if they had a, they have the circular mask, but imagine if they had a square mask where you can put the corners wherever you wanted. Imagine being able to put corners right on the corners of this building. All right, we don't have that. So I'm going to go with a radial gradient. All right, and I'm going to make it very, very large so that incorporates the entirety of the front of that building. Okay, I want the entire front of that building. Okay. And we're going to bring our exposure up a little bit. Let's see. Let's try just the shadows. Oh, yeah. I kind of like to bring the shadows up. Okay. I'm going to bring the shadows up about 25 points here. Okay. But it did it in a circle. So that means that it also got the side of that building. It got the pavement, it got the roof line, it got the trees in the background. We want to remove that. So what we're going to do, we're going to come up here, we're going to subtract. We're going to use a brush. I'm going to reduce the feather. I'm going to make it fairly large because I want to remove a lot of that. Okay, and I'm going to bring the flow up to 100%. I want to basically do a lot of removing of that. Okay, there's a couple ways we can do this. I can turn my overlay on, and that's a great way. All right, but one of the problems is that the overlay kind of hides the detail of the building. So it makes it hard to see where edges are. So I'm going to turn the overlay off, but I'm going to take my exposure, all right, because my exposure is at 0. All right, we manipulated shadows, but I'm going to take my exposure and I'm going to bring it up, all right, temporarily. This allows me to see what it is that I am getting rid of. And I can now very easily remove, all right, what I want to do is I want to remove, okay, all of this, okay. I just want to illuminate the front. Now here's the trick. I'm going to click at the top, shift click at the bottom, and what it does is it kind of creates a line between the two. Shift click. All right. And we can do that across the top. Shift click, shift click. All right. Okay. So now I see that I have the entirety of the front. I can now return that exposure down and manipulate my shadow. Okay. And at this point, if you want to squint, you can do the squint, right? And remember, we're trying to keep the illusion of night, okay? But yet we still want to see a distinction between the building and that background. So it doesn't need a lot. Oh, and I missed a little bit up here. All right, let's get rid of that up there. Okay. We can even bring this back. And I can see where I missed some get rid of that. Get rid of that. There we go. Okay. All right. That's looking pretty darn good. All right. Everybody see where I'm going with this? All right. Maybe even bring the temperature down just a little bit. Okay. All right. So let's go back here. Yeah, the before it's not going to give us. All right. So this is kind of what we had before. This is what we have now, after. Okay. Everybody follow so far? Oh, nope.
Yep.
This one. Sorry, wrong one. This one. Okay. All right. I want to add the light from the front. Okay, we're going to zoom in here. There's our light fixture. If you need to temporarily see it, we can always, manipulate our sliders. Okay. Just make sure that you return them back to where you are. All right. We're going to create a new mask. This time it's going to be a brush. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, and I am just going to paint in that light. And we're going to bring the exposure up. Okay. Let's go to detail. We're going to bring the sharpness down a little bit. We're going to increase our noise reduction. Okay. You can see I went a little bit over. If I press and hold the Alt or Option, it's going to bring me to this erase tool. All right. The Alt or Option brings me to the erase. All right. So we can control the size here. All right. And it allows us to, on the fly, toggle between adding and removing. And I'm just going to clean up that little bit of an edge. All right. Fix that there. Fix that there. Clean that up. All right. We're going to warm that up, see if we can add a little bit of yellow into it. It's not really doing too much. So what we're going to do is we're going to, oh no, there it did. It took a second to catch up. Okay. And the dark lines in between, you know, maybe we want to, oh, not the shadows, maybe the blacks. Open that up a little bit. Highlights. Okay. Can we get this a little bit more yellow? All right. I'm maxed out on my color temperature, so we're going to go right here to the color. All right. We're going to click on that and add a little bit of yellow, a lot more yellow, or a lot more yellow. That's too much. I kind of like that one. Yeah, I kind of like that middle one. All right. So we made that light yellow. Now we need to make, oops, we got to get out of there. We need to make the area that the light is landing on. All right, okay. The light that it's hitting the door and hitting the ground, I want to illuminate it. All right, so we're going to go back, create a radial gradient, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a radial gradient for the ground. All right, I'm going to give it a lot of feather. All right, this inner circle, this generates our feather, and I'm going to kind of maneuver it so it looks like it's a spot of light directly underneath my spotlight or my door light. Okay, and we're just going to go ahead and add a little bit of illumination, bring the exposure up. I'm going to warm that up. All right. And because it's nighttime, one of the characteristics of night images is they tend to be a little bit more contrasty. All right, so we're going to increase the contrast on that illuminated area. All right, and now you can see that it's looking a little bit more realistic. Okay, everybody follow what I did? I'm creating a cast light. Okay, it's a practical light. I'm building a practical light. Now I want some of this light to hit the door and maybe even spilling out here. All right, so for that we're going to take another mask, another radial mask. Okay, and this one is going to be a little bit tricky because I want the light to come from the point at the top and spread out as it goes down to the bottom. So that means I only need the upper half of this ellipse. All right, so I'm going to zoom out. All right, Control negative key. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and manipulate this so that it's kind of just hitting the bottom part of the door. Now, obviously, it's coming off of the bottom of the image, but that's fine. We're going to deal with that by removing part of the mask. Okay, so let's add a little bit of exposure. All right, and maybe we need to increase this, bring this up. I'm looking at as to where that light is going. All right, that exposure is probably a little bit too much. Let's see what highlights does. Highlights didn't do very much. How about shadows? Oh, shadow, there we go. There we go. That's working. Let's bring the exposure down, bring our shadows oops, shadows up. All right, we're getting some nice opening up on the side. Let's rotate this just a touch. There we go. Bring the exposure up just a little bit. Okay, and what I want to do is I want to preserve the area that's hitting the bottom of that door. Let's go ahead and also color temperature. Ooh, it really brightened it up when I brought the color temperature up. Okay, we're going to now subtract. Take the brush, make it larger, and I am going to subtract from that lower section. Oh, not too much. Okay. Increase the feather, increase the size, bring some of that back in. There we go. All right. Increase, decrease the shadow. Let's see, maybe increase shadow and decrease the, yeah, that's looking a little bit better. Okay. And maybe, okay. Turn that off. Maybe a little bit too bright. What do you guys think? A little bit too bright? I think it's a little bit too bright.
Maybe
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. That's looking a little bit more inviting. All right. You can also stack these if you need to, but all right. Let's see what that looks like. Fit to screen. F. Let's get rid of me. All right. What do you think of that?
it's looking good.
Yeah.
Good.
All right. The last thing I want to do, I think I just want to straighten out these two sides, make them up and down instead of kind of like keystoning. All right. So for that, we're going to go to our transform tool. What's that, Bob?
No, transfer. Yeah, I've done
Yeah,
it before.
transform. Yep, you got it. Drop one on that side, drop one on this side. Straightens that out. It kind of lowered it a little bit. Let's see if we can. Oh, nope, not XY. I mean, not the X. Let's see the Y. And we'll constrain to crop. There we go. Okay. And then the final question is, what about this part of the driveway? I'm okay with it actually. But just
But see how dark it is by the
yeah, it's darker
doorway.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah. All
And
right,
it
so
doesn't match the other side.
yeah, so let's see. Let's take linear gradient. And let's see, shadows.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go. That does look better. All right, let's increase this just a bit. Turn that off. Yeah, good call, Bob. All right. And that's it. That's the edit. So we kind of, one can argue if it's a minimalist. All right. Let's add one more mask. Let's see if we do a select background, if it'll do good. All right. And what I want to do is I want to bring my texture down just a touch. All right. And of course, I did not label my masks. Let's add a little bit of texture to the front of that building. Okay. And I think we can call that done. That looks fairly realistic. All right, so question, is it minimal? Is it a minimalist image? Yeah, you can probably argue that. Definitely has a very liminal space feel to it. You know, turning it to a night image kind of gives it that little spookiness. All right, questions, comments? Anything
Yeah,
about the technique of turning it from day to night?
No, we've done that before.
Yeah, we've done that before.
well, I haven't done that. I liked it. That was good. I'd be tempted to remove even more, like
Remove
the
what?
the handrails on both sides and that pipe going down the front right. And I'd even get rid of the white sign. And I think you'd wind up with even more minimal.
Okay. Well, let's give it a try. You know? All right. So everything we've done so far, we've done just in Lightroom. Okay. We haven't even decided to go into Photoshop yet. All right. But some of these may require Photoshop. Let's see how it handles it, shall we? Let's push let's put, oh, all right, there's 1, 2, not much difference.
Yeah.
3, yeah, no difference between any of those. All right, okay, so that's without the sign.
I like it.
Yeah, okay. And you said get rid of the railings. All right, let's get rid of the railings.
I didn't know that you didn't have to fill in your selection.
Oh yeah, for the AI, yeah, all you got to do is just run the outline.
Is that
Uh,
the same in Photoshop as it is here?
yeah, it is. The thing is, it uses AI to analyze it, and as you saw with the cemetery, sometimes it misses spots. So you have the ability to go in and add. And of course, if you press and hold the Alt key, it'll allow you to subtract. All right. So if you look right up here, see how the highlight is on the add. All right. As soon as I press the Alt or Option key, it changes to subtract. Now I can subtract from the, okay,
Selection.
from the selection. So, all right. Now, try to avoid doing too much at once. All right. So there's 2 sets of railings. You know, I can go ahead and add the second one, but I try to avoid doing too much because sometimes,
They get confused.
it seriously gets confused. So, all right. Wow. That's looking pretty good. 1,
Yeah, it's a pretty good one.
2, 3.
It looks pretty good with the bottom. That
Yeah.
bottom piece came in.
Yeah, I kind of like that one. Yeah. Okay. So now we do the other railing. Remove. All right. And there's that thing on the wall. We can probably get, all right. So 1, 2.
Mhm.
Oh, that actually did that pipe. I don't like that at all.
Oh.
3. All right. I think number 1's the best. All
Yeah.
right. Let's try this. And we're gonna do these 2 at the same time. Remove. Okay.
Oh, what happened? Okay.
All right. That's not bad. All right. Now you mentioned that pipe along the bottom.
How's that double gonna go in? You're removing something over another remove. You know, when you move the railing, the pipes were behind it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that gonna
Yeah.
work all right?
Well,
Yeah,
yeah. So
it'll work.
the thing that Mark said you to get rid of that pipe. Should we try to get rid of that pipe, or is
Yes.
that is that look okay?
Get rid of the pipe.
Get rid of the pipe.
Pipe.
All right, we're gonna push it. We're gonna push it.
Push it. Yeah,
All
let's see what
right.
it's gonna do with
Pipe
the railing.
trims.
See what it's gonna do with the railing that we already moved.
I've removed things after removing in the same
Yeah,
area.
it should be
It does
okay.
pretty good.
Okay,
Oh,
okay.
You might have to clone the grass on that one.
yeah. All right. So I made a very large selection.
Sure did.
Oh, okay. That's not too. It brought the grass up.
Up to,
All right. That
Okay.
one, oh no, that's too
No.
much texture going
No.
on there. And number 3, oh no, too irregular.
nah.
All right, so we'll keep the number 1, that one.
Yeah.
It put
The
something
green,
here.
darken the green up there.
Yeah. All right, so let's try regenerating. All right. So that's always the option. If you don't like any of the 3 options it gives you, just regenerate. Oh, there we
There.
go.
Let's go. That looks good.
That one
That's
looks good.
better.
I don't think we even need to look at any of the other 2 because that maintains the bottom foundation. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That looks good, Doc.
All right.
Yeah.
We
getting
have
more
this
minimal.
craziness going on right here. There's some kind of illumination. All right. Remember when we removed the cemetery,
Yeah.
it looked like it brightened that up. And all the edits, it doesn't look like we did anything to that. So let's create brush. We'll make that smaller. I'm just going to paint that in. And we're going to take our highlights and we're going to reduce the highlights. We're going to reduce the whites. There we go. And that's the only fix we need. Okay.
It's better.
All right. Can't get more minimal than this, right?
No.
Yeah. Looks good.
All right. So hopefully you picked up a few tricks, things to look out for. Again, remember, watch out for halos when you do your sky selection. You now have a technique that you can use to kind of minimize that halo. And if you take it in steps, you can see that we went, very drastically, at least maybe 3 stops of light from what we originally had with our very bright sky to what we have now. All right. All without really gaining that halo around the trees. Okay. So as long as you watch your balances, all right, and control your edges, you can do a lot. Okay. All right. How are we doing for time? All right. I don't think we have time for another edit,
No.
so we'll call that one.
Nice demo.
All right. I'm just going to go over a few more. All right. So walking out, they also have the local railroad club, the model railroad club, the park hosts. They have their own building, huge. If you ever get a chance, you got to find out when they're open. Walk through. the train layouts in this place are incredible. Bill can probably tell you, how incredible, because he and I walked through this when they were open. But anyway, what I did is, let me get this one, and this one. All right. So I tried to create a minimalist view of this. Basically just, again, you want to kind of sort of tell a story. And I loved the symmetry of this particular part of the building with the railroad crossing sign with the bench directly underneath it. So I positioned myself where I maintain that kind of symmetry dead on. And one of the things that I noticed after the third shot, I didn't notice it on shot number 1 or 2, is that little plant underneath the bench.
Ah,
Yeah.
I didn't notice it at first. And when I noticed it, I says, oh man, the plant's got to go. Until I started editing it. All right, so image number 1, not quite a close-up. I wanted to give myself a little bit of room to crop. This, and I figured I might want to crop the windows out. But then again, if I leave a little bit of the window, it kind of adds a bit of the story. But again, the goal is to be minimal. So you want the least amount of elements that tell the story. So the question I had in my mind is, can I tell the story without the windows, or do I need the windows there? All right. And if I need the windows there, how much of the windows do I need? Okay. Because I don't want the windows to be seen too much as their own element, that it detracts from the more important elements, which for me were the railroad cross sign and the bench. Okay. At first. Okay. So what I did is the last shot, I cropped in really, really tight. And I said, yeah, I kind of like that a lot more. All right. So I did 2 edits. The first edit that I did was this one. Again, Wes Anderson came into mind, and I simplified the color palette a lot. So the color palette is pretty much reds and blues. So it's a very much a contrasting palette. So if we look at our color palette, we have red at the top. Cyan is its opposite, but if we go just a little bit off of it, you can see that, blues in the neighborhood, we can very well work within that leeway there. Okay. So, so what I did is I just basically reduced the palette. I used, in this case, just to go over very quickly, I used the color mixer with the saturation. I basically brought all the saturation down to 0, and I brought the colors in a little bit. Okay. And what I ended up doing is I brought the color of that that little bit of greenery underneath. I brought that in. Okay. Just because. All right. And then I said, well, let me do a black and white conversion. All right. So what I did is I made black and white conversion. And in this case, I made that little plant
About
a character. Okay. Which now totally changes the story. Where before it was more about the sign and the bench, you know, by really highlighting and bringing that little plant, it's now about the plant. And I think I like this story a little bit more. And of course, I fought from doing the cliche, keeping the green and turning everything else to black and white. That technique's been so overdone, and would have cheapened the image, I think. Okay. But what I also did is I made it very, very bright. So now we have a counterpoint between the brightness of the bright white starkness of the railroad cross sign and the brightness. All right. So this is, you know, almost white. This is almost white. Okay. But this is gray, albeit, you know, lighter gray than everything else. But it becomes a lighter gray than our top and bottom, so that we have a sandwich. All right, we have a sandwich of white and white with tones of gray in the middle. Okay, I didn't want the bench to pull too much away from that little plant. Okay, and I cropped in really, really tight. Originally I cropped up to the board, and I said, no, it looks weird with just the board there. But having that tiny, tiny little strip of the window showing was just enough information to tell us it's a window without showing us it's a window. All right. So this is where those tiny little tweaks come into play. And, you know, I really love this edit more than the color edit. So I love the black and white conversion on this one. Okay. Any questions about this?
no.
Okay.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice, Tuck.
And then the last one I did, which is, that one, which I did and this one. Okay. Which again, I did that, day to night conversion. I can probably work a little bit more on the sky. You can see that the sky is a little bit mottled in between. I can play around with it a little bit more, but, I didn't want to go too crazy. But this also gives it that, let me get rid of that. It has that Wes Anderson aesthetic where you're not seeing the full picture, but this tells you everything about the subject without needing to show the rest of the building. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like an extreme, and this is one of those things that people are either going to like it or hate it. All right. They're either going to love it or hate it. I feel. All right. So this might be one of those images that, entering into a competition, you might not want to do if you're not sure how people are going to react to it. Because if you get too many people, especially, too many of the judges that says, oh, I hate it because it's too avant-garde or it's too, out of the box, you'll score low. But then again, if the judges are looking at a bunch of, I've seen it before, it's a repeat of the same old stuff. Oh, it's another flower picture. It's another butterfly picture. It's another sunset picture. Then this one may score high, and you never know. Okay.
Mhm.
That's why I don't like doing Wadsworth Falls anymore. People probably look at that and go, "Oh, I've seen it 1,500 times."
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Mhm.
All right. And this is pretty much the same day to night edit, um, with, that Wes Anderson feel. Doesn't quite have that eerie, liminal space feel,
Oh,
but it's very much an isolated feel.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And that's pretty much what I got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. And Mark, thank you for the inspiration.
I think that was the minimal thing I could have done.
But boom. That's awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Um, all right. I think maybe next week I'll cover all the things that are new in Lightroom, Photoshop, and Adobe Camera Raw. And then maybe we'll pull up something. Mark, just to let you know, the other guys already know. If there's anything specific you want to learn about, shoot me an email. You got my email. Or if you like me to see how I handle and edit one of your images, I'm more than happy, to edit an image that you have. I've done that in the past where it's like, oh, I don't know what to do with this photograph, or this particular part of this photograph is above my skill set. Send it to me. We talk about what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and then I'll edit it, and then you have the recorded record. So, and that goes to everybody. Okay. All right, guys. Any last minute questions, comments?
Yeah, I have a question for
Sure,
you,
Bob.
Buck. Okay, when I edit on the monitor, the thing doesn't look that sharp, but when I print it out, it's sharp. Why?
When you edit it on the
I know it doesn't
monitor,
on a monitor, it doesn't look sharp, but when I print it out on a print, it's sharp.
okay. And
Yeah,
you're printing from Lightroom?
yeah, I print it out as a
All
yeah,
right. So you export as JPEG.
yeah.
Okay.
It looks the monitor doesn't look sharp and crisp. When I print it out, it drives me nuts. I don't know how much sharpen it, how much to sharpen it, so I don't over sharpen it. And it's just
Yeah.
is it the monitor? Is it me? Is it my eyeballs?
Yeah. So unfortunately, sharpness is falls in the realm of texture. And as we discussed earlier, texture, we arrive at texture by the contrast between a light pixel adjacent to a darker pixel. All right.
Yeah.
So in essence, if anything that has a border, okay, you sharpen the border by increasing the contrast of that border. So if something on one side of the border is light, you lighten it up a little bit. Something on the other side of the border is darker, you darken it a little bit. You're creating that contrast between
Yeah.
that edge, all right? And the contrast is very tight, okay? When you get a soft contrast is when you have the gradation, a step down from dark to less dark to less dark to
Yeah.
less dark to lighter, lighter, lighter. All right. The more heavy the contrast is, the sharper that edge appears. Okay.
Maybe it's not sharpness. I'm looking at crispness, crispy. Maybe
Crispness.
it's
Right.
yeah.
So sharpness, crispness, and texture, it's the same thing.
uh,
It's just on a micro level, with things that have texture. All right. So picture sand. Okay. What creates the texture of sand? It's those tiny little grains that are being lit on one side by the sun, casting a shadow on the other side. But because they're very, very, very small, all right, you get this fine texture of, these spots of light and dark, light and dark, light and dark, light and dark. That creates a certain amount of texture. Okay. We have pixel density. All right. So in order for that texture to read, the difference between light and dark has to be larger than at least 1 pixel.
Oh,
Okay. Otherwise, it just becomes kind of like this monotone.
Mud.
Right. Muddy. Right. Okay. As the texture size increases, we get away from texture to contrast. All right. So picture a ping pong ball sitting on the sand. Okay. A single ping pong ball, we now see the contrast between the light side and the dark side against the contrast of the individual grains of sand of light and dark. But because there's a lot of sand, that becomes texture, whereas the single ping pong ball is now contrast of an object. Okay, so now we dump a bunch of ping pong balls and we've now created texture with ping pong balls. They're larger than the grains of sand, so the texture is created is based on quantity. All right, just like the texture of the sand was based on quantity, just the scale has gone up. Right? We place a bowling ball into the center of that,
Yeah.
and you see where we're
I see,
getting,
I
right?
see what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now what happens is your screen has a certain resolution. Okay.
Mhm.
And if you're not looking at it at 100%, what you're doing is you're seeing a representation, and now it kind of gives you a false sense of what the texture's doing. All right. So if we take that grain of sand element, okay, and we zoom out where you no longer seeing the individual black,
Pixels.
light and dark, okay, it looks less contrasty. It looks like a softer texture. Okay. So our instinct is to, well, gotta add texture. All right. So what we're doing in essence is we are increasing the contrast in that micro texture, that little detail. We're increasing the contrast, okay, to something that already had texture. We just couldn't see it because of the screen resolution.
Okay.
Okay. But it's there.
Mhm.
All right. Now, so it looks good to our eye, and then we print it, which is a totally different resolution. And now all of a sudden, it hits us in our face because we've over sharpened it. We've over exaggerated the texture. All right. Because now we're seeing it at, properly because it's printed now. Okay. And we go, oh my God, what the heck did I do? All right. So now that you understand that,
I have to make a judgment
you have to adjust here.
here. Yeah.
All right. And understand that, yeah,
I'm going to gain so much
right,
when I print.
right.
Okay.
So every once in a while, if you have a question, zoom in and take a look at the texture zoomed in. All right. And then when you zoom out, all right, you're going to see that there's a difference. Okay.
Okay.
And then just at this point, you have to kind of trust the process and realize that, you know, the texture's there. I saw it when I zoomed in. I don't see it when I'm backed out, but I know it's there. So fight the urge to add more. All right.
Okay.
Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. All right. Anybody else? Anything else? All right. Let me stop share. Okay. Thank you everybody for joining me. Mark, hopefully you found this interesting, and let everybody you know about this. Okay. First 3 Mondays of the month. Join us. Free to join. Okay. Let your friends know. Okay. That's it. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Enjoy your
Have a good
week,
week.
and we'll
Have a
see
good
you
week.
all next week.
Thanks, Doc.
All right. Have a good one.
Thank you for watching Learning Photography with Duck. Brought to you in association with Milford Photo, your local full-service camera store. Located in downtown Milford, Connecticut, Milford Photo offers you a personalized shopping experience. From the latest camera gear to printing and framing services. And, of course, educational workshops to teach you the finer aspects of photography. Don't forget to tell them Duck sent you.